a glitch. And that's just in fact, like I said, I see that I did years ago when I didn't know this stuff. Now I see it as our brilliant protection mechanism that he designed. He did not design sin. He did not design people to abuse children. He did not design trauma like that to happen. That's humans. And so our bodies we weren't designed to deal with the kinds of things that we deal with, but we still have this self-protective mechanism. So I think God is there right now. I feel so grateful. Many years when I didn't know any of this stuff, and I thought, what's wrong with me? Like, God says, do not fear. I'm full of fear. I don't get it. But now I do. Now I understand.
Welcome to Filthy Hope Podcast, Monique. It's magnificent to have you here today.
Oh, it's so good to be with you today.
For our listeners, this is incredible. We've got Monique Koven, who's all the way over in Montreal in Canada. So it's at the end of her day and it's at the start of our day. And Monique is a certified trauma healing, do I say therapist, Monique? What do you say?
I'm not a therapist. Well, I'm a certified trauma recovery coach. I was also a social worker for 25 years.
That's right. Yeah, amazing. You come to us with a plethora of experience, and I've had the privilege of having one-on-one coaching sessions with you years ago, and I really appreciated the way that you were able to crack open for me some of the things that we're actually going to dive in today about the nervous system. And Monique has a podcast called the Healing Trauma Podcast, and it's absolutely dynamic. She has the most incredible guests that come on, often terrific authors, clinicians, and experts in the area of trauma recovery. And it's a real quality podcast, and I really encourage all our Filthy Hopers to dive on and have a listen. And we will have all of Monique's material down in our show in our show notes today at the end of the podcast. So hook in and see her and listen to her and her guests. It's eye-opening and hopefully can bring healing and wholeness to you if you are also a trauma survivor. I should probably throw out a warning that today we are going to be diving into areas of trauma. We're not going to go into deep detail on anything, but if that's potentially disturbing for you, I think maybe you could sit out of this one. And certainly Jonty will piece up the podcast, and we will have warnings over any section that we think that may not be great or helpful for you to listen to. So you can watch also and tune into the sections on the podcast that maybe don't have the warnings on. So that's helpful for you also, because I don't want to go triggering or upsetting people that are already experiencing trauma, because that's no fun, is it, Monique?
No, and just to know that I really try to keep conversations safe, because we know that when we talk about trauma and the actual stories, it can be re-traumatizing. So really, if it's about hope, it's about, okay, so what do we do now? What can we do to make ourselves feel better?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Monique, can you start by sharing a bit about your story and how you ended up living in Canada? Because I've just realised you've just become a Canadian citizen, and I was actually
embarrassing. I've been living here for many decades, and I finally took the plunge and became a citizen. But so I have a dual citizenship. I am American and now Canadian.
Yeah, that's amazing. Can you tell us a bit about you, who you are, to set us up?
Okay. So I am a mother of twin women. Woo. I want to say girls because, in your head, they're still women, newly married twins. No, they didn't get married like Yeah. But they both recently got married, and it's just a different life. And like I said, I live here, and very passionate about the subject of healing trauma
Mm.
because I spent a great deal of my life trying to figure out why I was feeling the way I was when the trauma was over. And that is a part of my life anyway at this stage and for many, many years now. And it brings me a lot of joy because there's hope that things can feel a little different.
Mm.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's incredible. So you must bring such relief to other trauma survivors. I know you have with me, and
Oh.
sent me on a path that was of a great discovery for myself because I didn't understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling all the time and how it was impacting my life, even though the trauma happened years ago when I was a little kid. Yeah, thanks for that, Monique. It's definitely incredible work that you're um, the arena that you're working in. And it's quite new. It's not, this isn't work that's been going on for decades and decades, is it? It's quite new and forever evolving and forthcoming with new information. Can I get us kicked off on your Healing Trauma podcast? You have a fantastic Instagram page, and I really encourage our listeners to go and have a look at that because Monique puts up these most beautiful bite-sized chunks of healing information that come into my feed, and it just gives me that warm glow in my heart. And I go, oh, that's right. It's like a reminder of, oh, that's right. Breathe, Vanessa. Stop. Just take a breath. And you said this was on August 29, 2023. This beautiful post came up saying, you may not remember, but your nervous system does.
Oh, isn't that all of it?
Yeah,
Isn't that
yeah.
it?
That is,
Yeah.
it certainly does. And I was talking to Jonty on our podcast just this week. We talked about forgiveness, Monique. And Jonty was saying, and I was saying, I really struggle with forgiveness of the big stuff. I really struggle to forgive the perpetrators, and I just really do. And I cop a fair bit of hate, Monique, because I don't. Because as a minister, I should forgive, like Jesus Christ forgave me. I'm not perfect. I'm a sinful person, etc. Yet I fail to forgive them. And Jonty and I sort of cracked that open. I found it quite disturbing. And I had quite a reaction after it, just actually talking about the trauma. And because he asked me for an experience as to why can't you forgive? And I said, well, Jonty, because it's not like the trauma happened like a car accident and then maybe I hurt my neck and my whiplash healed and then 3 years later my neck was fine. And yes, I might feel a bit nervous at an intersection or a stop sign, but it doesn't that's not going to impact lots of parts of my life. That's somebody who hasn't had a car accident, right? I'm trying to find a broad non-sexual abuse kind of example. And he said, well, how does it impact your life then, Ness? Why can't you forgive? And I talked about going to the dentist, and I won't unpack that now, but just the idea of having my mouth open and my head back in extension and being in a vulnerable position. I think it's that. It can take me days. It takes me days of trauma in the lead up to going to the dentist, and then after the dentist, I'm left a bit of a mess, right? And then we talked about that, but it was quite a big example. And then that night I went home and went to bed, and I was just setting up my phone for the alarm for the next morning. And you know, on your iPhone, you scroll and you set your timer, but then a news headline can come up just on your phone. Even if you don't want to bloody see the news can just be there. And it came up, and as this goes to air, we'll be in the Olympics. And it was a woman in her 20s from Australia who had been gang raped by somebody in Paris. Now, that's all I read. That's all that my eyes saw on the screen. I've set my alarm. I lay down to go to bed. I pray about this girl. I'm just was gutted about the girl. I prayed about the girl. But then from 9:30 till 2 a.m., I lay in my bed shaking. My heart was tremulous and I couldn't stop the nervous system from doing what it does because my own personal story related to the headline.
Yes.
Why does it do that, Monique? Because I then want to rush to the hospital. I think I'm dying. I've now learned enough to know that I'm not dying. It's actually just my nervous system having a big reaction and I can't shut down my amygdala. But why does it keep happening?
Yeah.
You know?
That's, and that's back to the quote that you read, where it said something about not your nervous system. You may not remember, but your nervous system remembers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when you don't remember. But, in your case, you did. But essentially, what that really means is that the body remembers. Sometimes things happen to us when we're really small. Sometimes we don't even have language for it, but the body remembers. So one of the things that we know now, how the body takes things in, is that God made us with this self-protective mechanism so that we can survive life, survive threat, keep going. I mean, animals in the animal kingdom have this type of mechanism. There's lots of threats that they deal with. And so how it works is that when we have something that has been traumatic, and you know what that is in your case, you just described it. But even if it isn't that, like to that degree, but it was something that was traumatic, the body records these things. So I like to look at this like a filing system. We have like a filing system. And by the way, it's not just trauma, it's also good things. And it files it down in there. And it says, okay, I've got it there. And so when something happens in the present that is similar or has a thread of similarity, what happens with our brilliant mechanism is that it's like it goes back. This all happens like in a millisecond, looks in the file and goes, is this similar to what happened? Oh, yes, it is. And then suddenly our bodies, boom, the cortisol starts. We get a physical reaction and we're going, what the heck is happening to me? Why am I feeling so afraid, so shaking like you described, or just so. And now we understand why. Our brain is a major connector. It connects. It goes, this is like that. And then it starts this process. Now, the thing is that we know, we say, yeah, but I'm safe now. Well, that telling ourselves that that was then and we're safe now and it's 2024 and means nothing, because as far as our self-protective mechanism goes, it's doing its job. It has experience of how dangerous it was. And we have to learn to work with our nervous system to not tell it that we're safe. We have to show it that it's safe so that it gets an embodied, felt experience of something being safe. So I call that a disconfirming experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. So if you use the example of me being in bed, I've read that piece of text. I lay in bed and I have this body experience. Like I felt like my heart was on like on a train. It was just shaking like that, and I couldn't stop it. There was nothing I could do to make it go away. I tried breathing techniques. I did self-talk. It's okay, guys. Everything's all right. We're in bed. We're going to sleep now. It's nighttime. But I think what my brain does and why it lasted so long is that I catastrophize. So I think I catastrophize, and then I think because I've had another traumatic experience, which was my heart experience.
Remember?
Yeah, that I then think that I'm dying. So it's like two separate instances.
Yeah.
It's like, this is just double yuck. It really is. And then I wake up in the morning and I really have the shits. I have the shits with my body. I have the shits with my brain. And then I said to Jonty about forgiveness, and this is why I have trouble forgiving, because those bastards impacted my life even to the point of sleep on a normal work night. It's the trauma of my life impacts basic life function at times. And it's stuff I don't talk about. I get up, I go to work, I continue to do what I do. I continue to try and flourish and be a part of the world and society, and try to not have my trauma leak into my world. But it just can't help but not at times because of this body thing that goes on.
So what we're talking about here is physiological responses.
Yeah.
And so this is something new. I mean, we used to think that we had to talk about the story and, you know, talk about it and figure it out and forgive. And not that I'm not saying that, you know, forgiveness isn't or isn't, but that's all happening up here. But what's really going on with you? You're feeling like you're having a heart. It's happening in your physiology.
Yes.
So this is why this work of basically safety. How am I going to get my body to feel safe? And working with these experiences of safety and telling your body, or showing your body, not telling, because that showing your body that I'm safe now, that I'm safe now. Things are different now. I'm safe now. And there are all kinds of different tools that you could be using. They're called regulation tools to help your body get that physical experience of being calm and being regulated or feeling more at ease or in the present moment. But, you know, what you described, basically, you know, that triggering, you're right. It's like we have triggers everywhere because there's so many different kinds of reminders. Someone can walk into the room and they can have just like a face, and they might not be thinking anything, but that face looks like back to the filing system. Oh my goodness, that face is familiar. And we start to feel threat.
And the smell that I have this visceral response to this old-fashioned perfume from the 1960s called 7-Eleven. And it makes me want to be sick. I can't even see a bottle in a pharmacy, or if I happen to smell it on an older person, I almost want to get in a rage. It's awful. It's just awful.
No, I mean, it again, it makes sense. There's nothing, I want you to hear that.
Yeah.
Because often we think like something's wrong with me.
Oh, yeah.
Your body is working exactly as it should according to what it has been through. And our work is really about helping it to know that it is safe now. And that's like intentional work. It's lots of work. It's finding safety. Where are we safe in our environment? What are the cues of safety around us? You know, those kinds of things. And then also, I'm sorry.
No, you go on.
No, I was thinking when you were talking about, you know, somatic work and somatic experiencing as a type of therapy they talk about how when we've been through traumas, there's a particular cycle that has to go through where we feel the fear and we sort of shake it out, like we tremble, but it gets interrupted over and over and over again. And I think with somatic experiencing, there's ways to sort of allow that cycle to complete, because we have so much inside of us that just is incomplete.
That's so interesting. So do you think it's quite am I hearing you correctly when you say, so that shaking response, which I'm assuming is adrenal, an adrenal response to my brain that's saying, oh, you've read something really scary and this might be happening to you. You need to sort of get ready, set, go in the event that this is coming. Is that what my brain is kind of thinking in like a preparation for a race to get the hell out of there? Is it that kind of thing? And that we then go, oh, no, it's fine. Just go to sleep. Go to sleep, Vanessa, because you've got to wake up and go to bed. Yet I'm fighting against a physiological response to something. And would it be
Yeah.
better for me just to go for a run, just to put my joggers on and
Yes.
go out and go for a run?
Yeah. You know what you're speaking about actually makes so much sense. And I have actually even felt like there are two parts of us that are could be in total, like one part can be like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that. And then the body's like, you're getting ready to do it. And the body's like, no, we're not. So it's like
Yeah.
two separate. And so exactly. I mean, I think that you read that thing. I don't even think your mind had anything to do with it. I mean, it may have after, but I think it was your physiology
Yeah.
so quick that
Yeah.
has that there that it was totally unsafe. You started to feel it. It felt like it was happening now. And you felt completely out of control and scared.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're right, Monique, because the thing is my cognitive brain, my thinking brain my first thing was, oh, what a bloody horrible, disgusting thing for that beautiful girl. Quick, I need to pray about her. That was my first thinking. So I wasn't catapulted in my thinking to a memory. My body did it anyway.
Right.
I couldn't
Right.
even make it not happen.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, and then the idea of, and in the past, I've really given myself a rough call on this because I thought, well, no, I'll breathe, I'll meditate, and I think my body is saying, oh no, sorry, fuck off with the meditation, Vanessa. You really just need to get up and stamp your feet or run around a bit, or
Yeah.
have a cry, because that's something that can often help. A
Oh,
cry
yes.
and a bit of a move around, because my body's just, I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
My body's wanting to do it anyway. It's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Hence why I don't want to forgive anybody. I just think, shit. It's an overwhelming thing, because it's not a pleasant feeling to have
Yeah.
that kind of reaction. The only thing I think is I must be burning more calories. So that's good at 2 a.m. At least I'm burning calories and maybe my bum won't get so big. There's the hope, Monique. There's the hope in this filthy conversation, sister.
Oh my goodness. Well, you know what? For me, I'll tell you a little bit about this, about this thing with the brain and then the body. And then when I learned about the polyvagal theory,
Yep.
it changed everything for me. And when I met you, I didn't have that information. And I remember, so that information is fairly new and it's mind blowing.
It is new.
Because I remember speaking to a psychologist and saying, I don't get it. Why, when I walk into this place, suddenly I feel like I can't breathe. I feel like I gotta run. And she was like, oh, don't worry, you'll get used to it. Da, da, da. And I wasn't satisfied with that. And shortly after that, I started to learn about the polyvagal theory. And I learned about, and this is what I'm going to share with you, a concept that life-changing. And that is,
can you unpack what, for our listeners that don't even know what the polyvagal nervous system is and how that works?
just like briefly, I'm going to talk about that we have the polyvagal theory, which it was formed by Dr. Steve Porges. And then I did some training under Deb Dana, and I've had her on. If you guys want to learn more about the polyvagal theory, I've got a couple of episodes with her, and she goes into it, and it's fabulous because what she did was she took the information and she tried to put it into terms that are a little bit more easy to digest. Or although I've heard some of Stephen Porges's recent work and I don't find it difficult at all. In fact, I want to get him on the podcast. But okay, so basically it talks about how our nervous system goes into 3 states, although it does go into more, but we'll just start with the 3 states. So we have when we're sort of like present or calm or okay. If we're not calm, we're at least okay. But most importantly, we're present. Our thinking brain is on. This is the place where we can come up with ideas. I can hear you. I can respond instead of react. This is that place of where we're pretty okay. We're pretty regulated. Then as soon as my body has picked up a threat of some sort, whether it's a real threat, like something is really threatening my life, or it's a perceived threat. So it's a threat that I'm feeling based on something that maybe has happened in the past or something that's similar. My body will leave that regulated, okay place, and it will start to feel that activation. Okay. And that's called the sympathetics, this place of sympathetic. And that's the place where anxiety resides, where we start to feel activated, the cortisol, and basically it's that place where our body is getting ready to fight the threat or flee the threat. But what happens in that place is, because we've picked up a threat, our self-protective mechanism is really prepared to, do something. And our thinking brain, our processes, they go offline.
Wow.
So this is why we can't think our way out of an activation.
Wow.
We can't. So we can't tell ourselves, you're safe, calm down.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
We also can't have a thoughtful conversation with our partner in that kind of a place. Doesn't work because we're not thinking clearly, and neither of them if they're in that. So that's the activation place, not a place where we come up with our ideas. In fact, because we're so focused on the threat, I can recall when people would try to talk to me and I'd be like, I can't even hear you. I'm in that place of, threat, getting ready. And then the third state is what we call, it's kind of like a collapse state. This is where our body is not able to fight, not able to flee, doesn't have really any choices, and it goes into like a shutdown.
Yeah, wow.
And in this place, again, the animal kingdom, you see this. You see where an animal can't get away, it sort of shuts down. This is where dissociation lives.
They play dead. The animal will play dead, won't they? When they're in, you see that.
Yeah, yeah. Or they will play dead so that they have a chance to escape, because a lot of times animals aren't interested in dead animals. And so what happens in this place is that we can sort of disconnect from what's happening, and we don't feel as much. Apparently animals, I don't know, I wasn't able to ask an animal, but apparently they don't feel which makes me feel so good, because I hate the idea of animals being eaten. But they're not able to feel as much. And so doesn't that make sense when and I've spoken to many people who have struggled with dissociation, and it varies to different degrees. One person once told me they would float up to the top of a cabinet, and other people they're just kind of not there. They're just, so that's our place of collapse. And these are places that sometimes we can go into throughout the day, and they're normal. And that's our states, okay? Now, this is the part that blew me away that I'm about to share with you, that I learned. Dr. Stephen Porges came up with the term called neuroception. Write that down, everybody. Neuroception.
Yeah.
Not the same as perception.
No.
Because perception is using our thinking brain. This is happening below awareness in our bodies. And so we have inside our brainstem kind of like a lighthouse. And it's basically going round and round, going, is this safe? Is this dangerous? Is this safe? Is this dangerous? Is this safe? And it's doing it all the time below awareness.
Wow.
So let me bring back that closet that I talked about, or that space where I got activated. What's wrong? That was my neuroception, not my brain, not my cognitive brain. My neuroception picked up below awareness. Something in my environment was triggering me, and I was having a response to that. And that is neuroception. And what it does is it's basically looking in our environment for safety or threats.
Wow.
And and how it determines that is, remember that filing system I talked to you about?
Yeah.
It goes and goes, that mess over there, kind of like my chaotic home, in the past.
Yeah.
And so we start to feel activated. So all this to say, we make sense. We make
Yeah, yeah,
sense.
yeah.
And what we need for trauma healing, first and foremost, is to help our nervous systems to really get an embodied feeling of what it's like to be safe in our bodies. Many of us don't know what that's like. It's
Yeah.
hard to be in our bodies. It's hard to stay present.
Mm,
And that's, I think, the work of coming back into who we were made to be alive, to
mm,
be able to be in this life that we were given.
mm. Yeah, that's amazing. The sympathetic nervous system has a lot to do with our reaction
Mm-hmm.
to this lighthouse, this beacon that's cruising around looking for threat. Isn't that fantastic? It's almost like a ninja. We've got an internal ninja that's looking
Mm-hmm. Looking out for us.
yeah, a stealth avenger. That's how I'm going to think about it, cruising around within us, kind of protecting us, getting
Mm-hmm.
us ready and triggering us for what could be potential danger. Except that I wonder, uh, are there methods in which we can, are there methods that you're aware of that we can help settle the Avenger from triggering
Mm-hmm.
us? Because I feel like I want to have Botox in that spot. I want to shut that shit down, Monique, because I
Mm-hmm.
find it really tough and it
Right.
really interferes with my life. You know, it
No,
takes a lot
for
of
sure.
energy, doesn't it? It takes a lot of energy to live in that space, and I would rather throw that energy to somewhere else. You know.
No, for sure. I hear you. I hear you. And I hear the frustration. Get it. I get it. We all get it. Um, and I wonder if there could be a part of you that could have some gratitude for the way that it's worked so hard and is still working
Yeah.
to keep you safe. Like when I think about that, and I think often like, wow, some people I know couldn't even keep me safe. And my body is still
Mm,
trying and
mm,
trying to keep me safe. But you know what, when you asked is there something, I mean, we can use that neuroception and flip it on its back, meaning part of healing is feeling safe. Well, then if we have neuroception that's looking at all the things that could be threatening, we need to be looking at all those things and feeling what are the things that settle us? What are
mm,
the things that give me a deep breath? What are the things that just make me feel cozy or okay? How
mm.
do I know that? You
So,
know, and
yeah. So neuroception, Monique, is not only looking for the danger and the threat, but it's also picking up all the lovely stuff that we, oh,
mm-hmm,
how interesting.
mm-hmm,
Oh, oh, wow. So it's an Avenger that's actually, that has a soft side as well, that's not ready in battle armor gear. It's actually ready to pick up the flowers and the soft breeze and the nice food and the pleasant conversation and all those other pieces that make us feel calm. Is that right?
it is right. However, if you've got this filing system, which many trauma survivors do, full of experiences that were very threatening to us,
Yeah.
that caused us overwhelm, it really wants to keep you safe from that ever happening again. And
Mm,
so it's really going to be looking for those things and being alert to protect you.
mm,
And we really need to actively look and work on what are those good things? What are the things
mm,
that are, you know, help us to feel safe, to
mm,
feel grounded. And that's where regulating tools come in. There's lots and lots of practices because remember, our nervous system, I mean, okay, so this is something I didn't talk about. And that's when you know, we were talking actually before about, well, how does the body keep the score and how does that, you know, and one thing that's really important to know is that a lot of the patterns that we learned happened very young, very, very young. And think about when you ride a bicycle, you learn this pattern, you never forget. You don't forget. And so our bodies and these patterns are really set. And so we need to work towards showing again disconfirming experiences of
Confirming.
yeah, I love that word. I've heard it. It's not mine. And it means that we're showing experiences where we thought we weren't safe or that we're dangerous, and that now it's like we've not overcome them, but we've done them successfully, and we do them, and then we do them again, and we do them again, and then the nervous system starts to go, oh, I guess it's not so dangerous to do that. And it really does happen that way. But we need to be practicing. Now, we don't want to stress our nervous system. We want to stretch our nervous system when it comes to trying out these new experiences or doing these things. So always in small little bites, because remember, trauma was big and it was fast and it was overloading, and we would shut down.
And I didn't have probably in my own trauma as a child, I didn't have often probably the big language to describe or the understanding of what was actually happening to me.
No, and there was no language. How do you trauma? There's no language for something like that, but there is sensation, and that's what the body remembers. And it's sensation. So we want to show it. What is that? What is it like to feel safe? What is it like to feel I can breathe and I'm safe in my home and in my body and around people and all of that?
I remember having some one-on-one coaching with you quite a few years ago, and you must have been starting to delve into this area because you helped me go on my first, I was really concerned because I'd had a heart attack and it had happened in overseas. And so I was in England at the time, and I was worried that on my next big overseas trip that I would have this feeling. And that I wouldn't cope with the feelings associated, because I had trouble going to hotels, had trouble staying away from my home overnight, going anywhere. So it was kind of ruining my life. And I remember you helping me with strategies, because I wanted to travel also off medication. I didn't want to take an antidepressant. I'd come off the medication, and you did some beautiful work with me that I was able to actually go to Europe and have my first European holiday without, I did have some moments that were pretty overwhelming, but the majority of the trip I actually managed really well, and helped me, I think, have a language to understand why my body was reacting the way it was to trauma. And that in itself was an anchor point. And and because you operated like you were an empathetic witness to my story, my brain, my filing system must have filed you away and the conversations that we'd had, and we'd had numerous sessions together. So my sympathetic nervous system must have filed away those positive encounters with you, so that I had an anchor, something to hook into when it was happening. So I had to live through some body experience, but I knew I was going to be all right. And I think that's probably a good place to get to, because we can't Botox our sympathetic nervous system. Do you know what I want to? And I suppose that's what a good anxiety drug does. It Botoxes that part of the body, with just stops the feeling happening at all. But in stopping that negative feeling, you stop a lot of the really good stuff that requires the brain to function, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
I was just gonna say though, it's important when we understand that these things we grab, to help us through, they're really all we're trying to do. We're just trying to regulate our nervous system.
Yeah.
We're just trying. And so that's, again, I know I sound like a broken record, but that to me is like the first step when it comes to trauma healing, because this is what we have to deal with.
Yes.
This is what we carry around with us, the reactions, the responses, all of that. Right.
It's such a big conversation. Can I ask you, I'm really grateful for you unpacking that for us, because we have never had a podcast where we talked about the nervous system in that way. And it's very enlightening. And I hope our listeners can certainly tune into your material and take a deeper look at your work, because you have some incredible clinicians come on and unpack that very topic, and it's very insightful and very helpful. So thank you for that. Can I ask you, Monique, as a Christian woman, where do you think God is in this filthy mess of our body's reactions? Because I kind of feel like it's at times a design fault. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, for heaven's sake, God, you said that you made us good. It wasn't just good, but very good. I don't feel bloody very, very good. And
Yeah.
it feels at times like a fault in a glitch in the system. What do you reckon God had going on for us?
I don't see that as a glitch. And that's just in fact, like I said, I see that I did years ago when I didn't know this stuff. Now I see it as our brilliant self, protection mechanism that he designed. He did not design sin. He did not design people to abuse children. He did not design trauma like that to happen. That's humans. Yeah. And so our bodies we weren't designed to deal with the kinds of things that we deal with, but we still have this self-protective mechanism. So yeah, I think God is there right now. I feel so grateful. Many years when I didn't know any of this stuff, and I thought, what's wrong with me? Like, God says, do not fear. I'm full of fear. I don't get it. But now I do. Now I understand. This makes so much sense. I've got, as you may, as well as all of us have, generational, like, what happened in my generation? Oh my goodness. Down. Talks about that in the Bible. Yeah. And so for me, it's doing the best I can to love those around me, love my children, break that cycle. Were so many disconnections between mother and child in my generation. It broke with me, thank God. I mean, that's where God is.
There's the hope. Yeah, me too.
Yes, you 100%. Too. I know.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, that's amazing.
Hope. Thanks for reminding me of that. That's right. That God is definitely in all of that. And isn't it, I'm sure I'm going to answer this question in what I'm about to say, but I know that I feel at my most peaceful and my most sense of calm. There's a couple of places that I know I can be, and it's with my children. It's when I'm in the presence of my girls and my husband, and we're just having hilarious family time, just us together on a Friday night. It's just can be very super simple, pizza and margaritas or tacos and margaritas, and the dogs are jumping around like they're batshit crazy, and they're chasing the cats. And it's just a beaut. That sounds mental, but it's...
No, it doesn't. It sounds heavenly to me.
Yeah, it feels heavenly. Yeah, it really does. And the other place I can find it also is and I notice you've got one, is a little dog. My daughter has this little dog, Mouse, and the bloody dog has Mouse. And
I know someone who had a little dog named Mouse.
Did you?
Love it.
And it's a little cavoodle, and that little thing has rabbited into my heart, and I just feel if she comes and cuddles me and loves me so unconditionally, that I feel her soothing presence on my chest is really it can lower my heart rate and blood pressure.
Well, it's regulating, and that's what I was talking about. We need to find those things in our environment, in our life, that regulate us. Pets are wonderful regulators. So are friends that are relational, that it's a two-way kind of relationship. Safe friends. I mean, there's many things. Nature, walks. There's lots and lots of things in our environment.
I'm really blessed that I get to go to work with Pastor Jonty Cornford, who's not on this podcast with us today. He's recording other material. And He is a person that I feel I feel really regulated around him, and
Wow.
I get to go to work, and often we have difficult conversations in our podcasts and difficult. We really dive into those grey spaces where life and faith collide, and
Mhm.
they are sticky conversations at times and stuff that never gets discussed in the pulpit. So I always feel very calm when I'm actually with Jonty. He's one of those beautiful people in my world that
Mhm.
I feel really safe around, which is amazing because he's super young. Like he's the age of my own children, but yet I feel like I often joke, Monique, and refer to him as the senior pastor in our church because he's like he carries
Wow.
all this great, powerful weight. I see it's a very godly presence that he brings to our relationship, and it's such a blessing. I'm lucky to go to work with somebody that
Mhm.
actually is like that. It's quite a blessing. I don't know if I do that for him, but he does that for me. Oh,
I'm sure you do.
I don't know. Oh, can I tell you any further thoughts, Monique, on any of that? Anything that you'd like to share with us?
I think, it goes back to just, I want people to know that they're not alone, that there's so many of us who have experienced those symptoms and those, not understanding, and it makes sense and you're not alone. And second thing is that there is hope. I mean, there really is hope in changing our nervous system. Do we eradicate it? Do we get a brand new one? No, but can it be better? Yes.
Mm,
Yes, we can learn how to feel safer. We can learn how to choose safer people. We can make our environment to feel more comfortable and safer for us. So yeah, that's
yeah,
it.
amen. And the beautiful thing is I know that when we hit eternity, we're not going to have any of these issues. It's going to be beautiful, and I'm going to get to experience what it's like to not actually
Mhm.
have these feelings, which I think will be amazing. But I just thank you so much for your time today. And I know it's
Pleasure.
the end of your busy work day and you're in the middle of summer and you're probably on vacation over there in Canada, having a magnificent time. But for our listeners, if you're listening and not watching us today, be sure to go to the Healing Trauma podcast, and you can find that on all the different platforms. And if you Google Monique Koven, Koven, you will be able to find her landing page to the Healing Trauma podcast, and all Monique's material will come up. If you're listening and driving today and you can't write it down, Healing Trauma podcast, say that over in your brain a couple of times and that'll lock right in, and you'll find it there, and you'll find some really great material that can certainly help you, I'm sure. You're a treasure and a blessing.
So are you.
You are much.
You are.
You
You,
are,
you,
you
you.
are, you,
You.
Thank you
I
so.
loved you. You know that. I've told you that. I loved you. Didn't forget you. Stamped on my heart. Still there.
Yeah, I know. I think I might book in for some one-on-ones if you've got any time after your summer vacation, because I'd like to give this somatic work a bit of a crack, and I feel very safe with you. So if maybe once I finish this podcast, can we maybe lock in a time if you're ready?
Sure. It would be my
Amazing.
pleasure.
It's amazing. Thank you
Right.
so much, Monique.
Pleasure.
This is a prayer for the people who want to give up, who have been hurt beyond repair.